There is a specific kind of silence that falls when a single glance changes everything you thought you knew about the person sitting right beside you, and for me, that silence arrived under the blinding brilliance of an uninterrupted afternoon sun. I was sitting in the passenger seat of a cruising sedan, holding my best friend's unlocked phone to look up alternate route directions after my own mobile battery had died, when a sudden notification flashed across the top of the glass screen. Beneath the incoming message from an unknown number lay the contact entry for my own mobile line, written in bold, unfeeling black letters that read, "Don't text him drunk." The words burned into my retinas like a branding iron, a silent cruel label attached to my identity by the one person who had promised to stand by me through my darkest hours. In a fraction of a second, 10 years of shared laughter, midnight promises, and unwavering loyalty felt like a beautifully constructed lie, leaving me breathless in the warmth of a midday sun that suddenly felt ice-cold. If this story touches something deep within you today, and if you believe in the transformative power of kindness, genuine forgiveness, enduring hope, and second chances, please take a brief moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share this journey with someone in your life, and subscribe to our channel to join our growing family. To understand why those 5 words felt like a physical blow to my chest, you have to understand where Julian and I had come from. We had met during our early university years in a seaside town, bonding over shared struggles, modest dreams, and an unspoken agreement that we would always look out for one another. Over the years, Julian was the brother I never had, the person who stood beside me when I launched my first small business, and the steadfast presence who held my shoulder at my father's funeral 2 years prior. My father's sudden passing had shattered my world in ways I could not articulate at the time, pulling me into a slow, suffocating fog of grief. During those terrible early months, I lost my footing entirely, drowning my sorrow in late-night loneliness and reaching for alcohol to numb a pain that felt too immense to carry alone. There had been nights during that painful season when, overwhelmed by despair and memory, I would reach for my phone in the dark hours of the early morning and call Julian, my voice slurred by pain and sorrow as I poured out my heart. He had always answered, his voice patient and gentle, talking me through the worst of my grief until the morning light broke through the blinds. But 6 months after my father died, I realized I was destroying myself, and with Julian's support, I checked into a recovery program, committed myself to healing, and reclaimed my life day by painful day. For the past 14 months, I had been completely sober, rebuilding my career, repairing my spirit, and believing that the nightmare was behind us. Julian had been there through every milestone, cheering for my progress and walking alongside me in what I believed was total, transparent trust. Yet sitting in the passenger seat on that warm Saturday afternoon, looking down at those 5 words on Julian's phone screen, the illusion shattered. We were on our way to an afternoon gathering in a coastal town 3 hours away, a trip we had planned for weeks to celebrate my new career opportunity. The sun was shining brightly through the windshield, illuminating the dusty highway ahead, but inside the car, my chest tightened until every breath felt like pulling glass into my lungs. Julian was casually tapping the steering wheel to the rhythm of an upbeat song, completely unaware that the screen in my hand had exposed a secret corner of his mind. To him, despite all my hard work, despite 14 months of complete sobriety, despite every tears-soaked honest conversation we had shared, I was still just a pathetic liability, an embarrassing nuisance preserved in his contacts as a warning label. I quietly closed the navigation application and placed the phone back into the center cup holder without saying a word. I turned my head to look out the side window, watching the green fields and coastal cliffs blur into a continuous ribbon of bright color under the high midday sun. Julian noticed the sudden shift in my energy, turning to offer a warm, casual smile as he asked if I had found the correct exit on the map. I managed a tight, mechanical nod, keeping my voice as steady as possible as I replied that the highway was straightforward and we were on the right path. Deep inside, however, a storm of humiliation and anger was gathering strength, threatening to tear down every piece of peace I had worked so hard to cultivate over the past year. As the miles stretched on beneath the clear blue sky, the silence between us grew heavy and suffocating. Every memory of our friendship over the past 2 years began to play backward through a lens of suspicion and hurt. I began to wonder if every warm gesture, every words of encouragement, and every supportive embrace Julian had offered during my recovery was merely fueled by pity rather than genuine respect. I wondered if he secretly looked at me with disdain, viewing me not as an equal or a true friend, but as a broken project he had to manage and label. The shame was suffocating, making me want to ask him to pull over at the next gas station so I could step out into the heat and walk away from a friendship that felt corrupted at its core. Instead of exploding, I forced myself to sit with the pain, observing the quiet rhythm of the afternoon. We pulled off the main highway around 2 o'clock to grab a cold drink at a scenic overlook high above the ocean cliffs, where families were taking photographs and enjoying the sunny weather. The bright sunlight reflected off the glittering water below, creating a vivid backdrop that contrasted sharply with the darkness heavy in my heart. Julian bought 2 cold lemonades from a small wooden kiosk and walked over to where I was standing near the stone barrier, handing me one with that same familiar, unbothered smile that now felt like a mask. Standing there in the afternoon air, looking out at the endless horizon, I realized I could not carry the weight of that unspoken sentence for another hour. I turned to look at Julian directly, his face framed by the bright sunlight, and asked him plainly why my contact name was saved on his phone as a warning not to answer a drunk call. The smile vanished from Julian's face instantly, replaced by a sudden, total stillness that revealed just how deeply my question had caught him off guard. His posture stiffened, his knuckles widening around his paper cup as he stared at me, processing the fact that I had seen the screen while checking the map directions earlier. For several long seconds, the only sound was the distant crash of ocean waves against the rocks far below us. Julian looked down at his shoes, taking a slow, shaky breath that betrayed a deep, hidden emotion I had not expected to see. When he finally looked back up at me, his eyes were glossy with unshed tears, reflecting the intense sunlight in a way that made him look vulnerable and exhausted. He did not get defensive, nor did he offer a quick, superficial joke to dismiss the situation. Instead, he stepped closer to the stone wall, leaning his forehead against his hand as if a dam holding back years of quiet burden had suddenly burst inside him. Julian began to speak, his voice soft and thick with emotion as he explained the origin of those words on his screen. He reminded me of a specific night 2 years prior, a night shortly after my father's funeral when I had reached my absolute breaking point in the middle of a torrential storm. On that night, long before I entered recovery, I had called Julian in a state of absolute panic, incoherent and fading fast from an intentional overdose of alcohol and grief. Julian had driven through dangerous road conditions in the middle of the night to reach my apartment, carrying me down 3 flights of stairs to his car and racing to the emergency room where doctors worked for hours to stabilize me. While sitting alone in the bright, sterile waiting room of that hospital during the agonizing hours before dawn, terrified that he was going to lose his best friend forever, Julian had taken out his phone with trembling hands. He told me that he was so tormented by the fear of missing another urgent call, or failing to realize when I was spiraling into dangerous territory, that he had renamed my contact as a raw, desperate reminder to himself. The label was never meant to mock me or dismiss my pain, it was created as a stark, urgent alarm to remind him that whenever that name flashed on his screen, he needed to drop everything immediately, answer on the first ring, and save my life no matter what he was doing. Julian looked at me with tears flowing freely down his sunlit face, explaining that in the chaotic months that followed, through my admission into rehab, my gradual healing, and my brilliant return to life, he had simply never thought to change the contact name back. To him, the text was a leftover scar from the scariest night of his life, a painful memory of the moment he almost lost his brother, not a reflection of how he saw me today. He wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, telling me with complete sincerity that watching me overcome my grief and rebuild my life over the past 14 months was the proudest achievement he had ever witnessed, and that he respected the man I had become more than anyone else in the world. Standing beneath the bright sky, listening to his trembling voice, the heavy fog of resentment and humiliation that had been building inside my chest began to evaporate into the warm air. I realized that while I had been focused entirely on my own pain and the shame of my past actions, I had completely overlooked the silent trauma Julian had carried as the person who held my life together when I was tearing it apart. He had borne the emotional weight of my darkest hours without ever complaining, without demanding recognition, and without holding my mistakes against me, carrying the burden of that terrifying hospital night in silence while celebrating every step of my recovery. The shock that had begun as a painful wound transformed into a deep, overwhelming realization of what true loyalty actually looked like. Julian retrieved his phone from his pocket right there in the sunlight, unlocked the screen with trembling fingers, and brought up my contact details. He tapped the edit button, erased the 5 painful words that had triggered my heartbreak, and typed in my name followed simply by the word brother. He held the screen out toward me so I could see the change, his eyes begging for understanding and forgiveness for allowing an unhealed ghost from our past to cause me even a single moment of doubt. I reached out and pulled Julian into a tight embrace, the sun warming our shoulders as two friends shared a moment of profound, quiet reconciliation on that cliffside overlook. The pain of the morning melted away, replaced by an even stronger foundation of mutual respect and deep gratitude for a friendship that had survived the deepest valleys of life. We stood there for a long time in the gentle ocean breeze, letting the past finally rest where it belonged, fully aware that true brotherhood is not defined by perfection, but by the willingness to stand together through the storm and rebuild trust in the daylight. Before we conclude this journey today, please take a moment to reflect on your own life and leave a meaningful comment below, sharing a time when an unexpected truth or misunderstanding ultimately brought you closer to someone you love, or what genuine forgiveness means to you. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. As we walked back to the car under the clear afternoon sun, the road ahead felt brighter and wider than it ever had before. We got back onto the highway, the windows rolled down slightly to let in the fresh coastal air, talking openly and effortlessly about our future, our dreams, and the endless possibilities waiting for us ahead. The 5 words that had threatened to tear us apart had instead revealed the incredible depth of a love that had saved my life, reminding me that even the deepest scars can become symbols of strength when viewed through the eyes of patience, truth, and unconditional forgiveness.